Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Hobby Hammer podcast. That is Lloyd.
And that is Ben.
And in this episode, we are going to be tackling the main topic of Henry Cavill's Amazon Prime War. I don't even know the title, doesn't even have a title, but we're going to
That
be.
doesn't have a title, but we're going to talk about it anyway because we can. We're going to talk a little bit about the facts and what we do know, and we might speculate a little bit as well on potential things that could come of it. And obviously, we'd love to hear from you guys as well. So feel free to have a good chit chat with each other in the comments. But first off, where are we going, Ben?
So let's start off with the rumor mill, shall we? And this one is a weird one. I
Yeah.
is that so? Am I right in thinking that skull that's an Imperium skull? So I think we're in the right.
Looks like it. It looks like it could potentially be a grav plate or something, like an anti-grav plate.
Mhm.
Um, the thing that's jumping out at me actually, you know those Leagues of Votan
Bikes.
pioneers on the hover bikes.
Oh,
That kind of it makes me think of them. Perhaps it could potentially be a grav plate. Um,
ooh.
the other thing it could potentially be is a shield generator, maybe.
Potentially,
I
potentially.
don't know.
This is kind of why I like these little rumor mills because they don't give you enough to really be like it's
Yeah.
like well, rarely. Some people obviously have a little bit more of an insight into these type of things, but
Hmm.
I definitely don't on this one. But I think we talked about it a little bit last week about the potential range refresh of the Space Marines.
Yes.
Did see some in my newsfeed, some rumors of Land Raiders rhinos. Do you
Yes.
go Grav rhinos? And I feel
I
like
don't know. I don't know if they do it. No, I
no,
don't know. I think they'd stay tracked. I think they'd keep them tracked. I don't think they'd go grab.
no.
The other thing that I'm wondering with that as well is if it was Space Marines, I imagine that would be an AdMech skull, which it's not.
Mm, yeah.
So it's not an AdMech skull. And the reason I say potentially could be a shield generator type thing is because it is rumored that one of the new or the new Imperial Knight model is potentially has a shield generator, and that's its role.
Oh,
So I wonder if it could be something to do with that, or it could just be a grav plate for a new uh, League of Votan something or other, which could also be quite cool.
yeah, and they
With
are.
you.
Yeah, they are obviously. I mean, that's something I'm be very excited about. They're well, in this. Yeah, we talked about that last week as well. The fourth of those squares that they revealed, the other ones were all Space Marine chapters, but then that fourth one was
Yeah.
a Votan. So that'll be. I'm so keen to see what models they bring out for the Votan because I think they've got quite a lot of flexibility when it comes to that because
They
they're.
do, yeah. And I guess, I don't know, Votan are a new
Mhm.
faction, are they? So I don't know, they wouldn't be doing range refresh, so they could be doing a couple of additions, or they might be do just one model. We don't really know. So it will be cool to see. And it's not gonna be far off, I don't think.
Yeah, I think they're going to treat it a lot like the not the sisters Adeptus Sororitas, where they released the first wave of a fairly limited amount of models, and then they brought
Mhm.
the sec. I think that
Yes.
I mean
Yeah, could be right then.
I hope that's the way they treat the Votan because the Votans, it's not a huge amount of models in their range. So I hope they bring out more than just a single character unit. I think that's probably what they're going to do with they've already done that with the Death Guard and the
Hmm.
World Leaders and stuff like that. But I think the Votan, I would imagine the design team are probably quite keen to work on things like that where they're not as boxed in terms of how much creativity they can go with because obviously Space Marines the lore is what 40 years old.
Yeah,
So you
pretty
kind of
much as old as me.
parameters, yeah, nearly and me. Um, whereas Votan, as far as I'm aware, obviously there was the squats, but they were kills, kind of written out. But the Votan are these kind of newer factions, so I think we may get like almost like an Age of Sigmar esque renaissance with those guys
Oof,
because they are
careful.
well, maybe because I think that's what we talked about this as well, but like the limit of ideas, well, the limitless ideas in terms of Age of Sigmar comes out in the sculpts. It comes out in those models.
You know,
The restrictions you have on 40K is that there is so much history
yeah.
that they are slightly hamstrung. But with a brand new faction like the Votan, I think their creativity could, if I was a designer, I'd be like, give me the Votan. Let me really see what I can do with that. So I think it would be a bit of a missed opportunity if they don't.
Yeah, could be. And for what I will say to that is that no law is ever permanent. So canon, etc., can always get retconned. So
That's
you never know. You
that's
never know.
that is very true.
So
Uh,
that's the rumor engine
mhm.
for last week. So lots of speculation. Let us know in the comments what you think it might be. So shall we go to the news and have a look at what's due for pre-order this weekend? So what have we got?
Take a little look. So we have the new villains. So I've got this is all from the Warhammer community. The two new villains
Mhm.
rise for the Death Guard and the World Leaders. Now, obviously, we saw not his name, the Lord of Poxes. That was the one of the models that leaked quite early, and I believe people were like putting the sprue together online.
I think he would. They did a Dante with him, didn't they? Where he accidentally got sent out to someone instead of something else,
Accident.
uh, which is the best way to
I mean,
leave. I think.
it's I've got to appreciate that. If that is planned, well done. That's a good way of doing it. It's like here,
There's not. There's
random
one
person.
now. I know the Lord of Poxes got done a while ago, but there's a Dark Eldar one as well recently, wasn't there? That turned up off somewhere. I'll have to see if I can dig it up online. The picture, but there was definitely one
That would be
that
cool.
turned up somewhere.
Some dark.
Uh,
Well,
shall we say?
what do
But
you
yeah,
think of the Lord of Poxes, the model itself? Have you had a good look at it?
yeah. I think he's fine. I think he fits into the Death Guard aesthetic really, really nicely. I think it does. It kind of follows that pattern of just having the one new character model that's been released. I mean, I'm not a Death Guard player, so I couldn't say if it's a character that's desperately needed within the faction itself. But I think I mean, obviously he'll be released on his own later on. He's been released as part of the Poxrot Vector Battle Force, which on the surface, looking at it, seems like a really cool battle force. We got 7 Plague Marines, the new Lord of Poxes. You've got some Terminators. You've got a Blight drone, Blight hauler. So you've got some very nice and that Plague Burst Crawler tank. So it's some really nice stuff in there to get yourself started with the Death Guard army, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously they've got their disgusting resilience as well, which means they stick around on the tabletop. So yeah, I think it's a nice model. I think it fits in with the range.
I
So
mean,
we'll see. Yeah, I wonder. Again, these battle forces tend to sell out quite quick, don't they? They're very popular. So
they are indeed. And I mean, just
we'll,
looking at it, like it's a pretty solid. I mean, the fact that you get a tank, it's a nice variation that you would be quite easy to add on to from
mm,
other kits. I think the model itself looks badass. I think that sword he's got on his back is. I wouldn't want it to. It's called the Great Plague Blade. It has devastating wounds, lethal hits, strength 8. Yeah, so it is a. It's gonna hit hard, which it looks like it. I just like it when weapons do what they look like they are capable. That's good.
they
Good.
don't just tickle you.
Yeah, like it looks like it would chop most Marines in half, which its strength it is going to.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah, I like
true.
the model. It's a cool pose. Like, I think the posing of a model really, I mean, obviously that's a very simple thing to say, but it makes the difference in a model. Like his stance, the way the blade's like even just slung over his back like that is
Mm.
it's just so cool looking.
Yeah,
We've also got the new combat patrol as well for the Death Guard, which again, pretty good. Pretty good.
yeah,
You get a Rhino. You get is that 7 Plague Marines? Which is
yeah.
obviously
7 Plague Marines. That's the number of Nurgle. So yeah, all Plague Marine squads are 7. You got a Tallyman. You
Mhm.
get 3 Death Shroud Terminators as well, which is awesome.
Hit hard.
That's and also a Lord of Virulence as well, which is the one with that dripping power fist. I guess he looks a little bit like a Terminator, but he might be a little bit smaller. So
Yeah.
again, um, another good set of minis really, because there's one criticism of Death Guard is that they're slow,
Mhm.
but you can whack them into the Rhino and that'll get them where they need to go a little bit quicker. And the Death Shroud Terminators, I imagine, can deep strike onto the battlefield.
Yeah.
Um,
Like, well, from the last time I played them, they can. Yeah.
yeah, so that's again, it's a nice fast moving Death Guard force, I guess. So you can get them where they need to be, and again, I imagine 2 of those will give you a fairly
Yeah.
good starter army for Death Guard. I'm not sure how the new edition will play because I know in the past Death Guard have tended to be very Boxwalker heavy, and in fact the last combat patrol, if I remember correctly, was Typhus, 7 Plague Marines, and then 20 Poxwalkers, maybe something like that. So a lot of zombies to paint. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, um, not
Look at that.
sure, but this seems a lot more power armor based, which would be something I would be more interested in.
Same. 20 Poxwalker. I painted 20 Poxwalkers. I painted 40. zombies as well. I painted lots of high count miniatures, and it's challenging. It is challenging. So I think this is a fantastic looking box. And I think, again, just based off the community's response, I think that the community is in agreement with that. That they've actually done a good job with this. We there's it's quite a highly critical community sometimes from time to time.
No.
Sometimes,
No.
sometimes, sometimes. And then we've got the world leaders. Obviously, got the data sheets and the new dice. Yeah,
Yeah.
over there. But
You got those two very you got the two very special codices as well, haven't you? Where I think the Emperor's Children was last weekend, and you've got Corn and Nurgle this weekend, and there's a Thousand Suns one announced where they're just, I don't know, it's really cool. Dread to think how much they might be going for on eBay, but I know one of my friends is very keen to get the set, and he managed to get the Emperor's Children one, so hopefully he will manage to get these ones as well. But yeah, the Ghost Storm Slaughter Pack Battle Force, I mean, that's a mouthful in itself.
yeah,
That comes with the new Slaughterbound, which is an infernal fusion of Bloodthirster and World Eater. So just looking at the picture, he does, obviously he seems much bigger than the 8 pound, but this is a very infantry heavy box set by the looks of it. What are your thoughts on that one, Ben?
I mean, I absolutely love the what are they called? The 8 bound, the exotic
8 pound,
8
yeah.
bound. I think they are so cool, and I believe in the lore they've allowed 8 chaos demons into them, and they have to basically wrestle into submission. So they are just juiced up
Yeah.
more. And again, from the rules that I know from the last time I played them, my word, they hit like a truck on fire with chain swords attached to both sides of it. Like they are going to
Yeah,
hit.
yeah.
So the fact that you get 9 in that box, you get the leader who I assume buffs them up in some way because that's usually,
Probably, yeah.
and then you get the jackals who are pretty. I mean, that's the only part I'm like, maybe would have liked some berserkers in there instead. But I mean, jackals, they have a
That's your screen, isn't it? You send them first, and then let them get shot whilst the do the charging.
yeah.
I do chuckle when they put transfer like decal sheets, decal sheets. I always get picked up saying decal sheets.
I've started saying that because
Potato. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Really. Uh, I challenge you to find somewhere to put one on either the 8 pound or the normal core berserkers. There's just no room because and their shoulder pads are sculpted and everything like that. So, but at least you got them as options. You put them on vehicles, I suppose.
very true, very true. And
So
then
in that box, then you get 9 um, 8 pound, but you can also build them as exalted 8 pound. You got 20 jackals, and you get the new slaughterbound as well. So that's again very infantry heavy in comparison to the Death Guard box. And then you've got the new combat patrol as well, which is a demon prince. What we got? 10 corn berserkers, 10 jackals, and we've also got master of executions.
yeah, I think he's actually well again from the last time I played him, I think he's actually a pretty good character to have. Well, I just have like I don't say PTSD. That's a bit seems a bit extreme, but like I have played the World Eaters so many times. I hate them. I hate them. I hate them. I hate them actually probably more than I dislike Tau or the entire community hate Tau. But also it's kind of one of those things like I love zombies because as a kid I remember a friend of ours brought over the a PS1 and played Resident Evil.
Yeah.
Scared the wits out of me, and I had nightmares for months. I'm sure my parents are so glad they brought that over, but I had nightmares for months, and now as an adult, that I've just got this weird obsession with zombies. So I actually, despite hating them,
Tackling your trauma head on.
yeah, I'm just like, you know what? They are some awesome looking models. But as we've talked about before, I can appreciate them from a distance, I believe. I think I'm just like, yeah, you guys are cool. If people
Yeah.
like them, awesome. But I do like the fact that you get that centerpiece. Obviously, it's no Angron, but that Chaos Demon, I think,
It's still a hefty model. I mean, even
is.
just looking at how much that is on its own,
Mhm.
it's like a 50, 60 pound kit. So it's not a cheap kit. So there's probably some good value going on there. And also the other thing I noticed as well, and probably makes sense now that it's actually part of the Corn Battle Force, is been out of stock for ages and ages. I've just done make sure you can see this, but there's an Emperor's Children one. But also it's a really nice versatile kit.
Yeah.
So you can build it with wings, without wings. It's got a different head for every god. It's got a default head. It's got Age of Sigmar armor. It's got 40k armor. You can use the Age of Sigmar one in 40k. It's got a big axe. It's a really nice versatile kit. It's got different feet. So if you want to do a Zinch one, it's got bird feet, which I think is what. Yeah, looking at that, if you look at the one there, it's got the bird feet, whereas the one I just showed you's got hooves. It's just a really nice. That's a really nice kit to have in there.
So, do you think this is a potential? I mean, it looks like it could be an easy one to pick up two of them to kind of give you, that anytime.
I'm not sure if we need two demon princes. But again, that comes from not really knowing how Khorne are going to play. I mean, two Khorne demon princes are just going to destroy pretty much everything they come up against. So you could look to pick up two. I think one of those and perhaps that Slaughter Pack Battle Force. So if you pick those up together, that would give you a really good core. But it would take you. There's a lot of infantry, Ben. A lot of infantry. A lot of trim. Remember last time we spoke about trim? There's a lot of it on there, so it might take you a while to paint those up to a level that you're happy with. But yeah, I mean, I quite like the Khorne range, and I'm glad they did that separately on its own because I think the aesthetic is fairly unique. I also think they've just used one of the Berserker heads on that Lord of Executions as well, which is quite cool because it just makes him that little bit more Khorne.
Yeah, yeah. Cause is he not usually helmetless?
He's usually got like a hooded head, I think, like a proper, old school medieval executioner.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. You can't see me.
If I can't see you peripherally, it means that
you don't know who I am.
Yeah. And then we've got the Emperor's Children one.
The Emperor's Children one.
You know more about this than me. I don't know a huge amount about the Emperor's Children, but
so we've got the it's nice. It's a nice box actually. I mean, you've got the Lord Exultant. You've got 10 Tormentors / Infractors because they're the same kit. So it's you're going to get So you can build them either as Tormentors or Infractors. Now I know the way Combat Patrol works is you've got a set of rules. So you have to, if you want to use the specific Combat Patrol rules you get in the box, you need to build them the way that it's described in the box. You've got the Flawless Blades as well, which are a nice kit. I've just built the Flawless Blades kit that Games Workshop sent me as part of the Emperor's Children release. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, you'll notice if you look at the Flawless Blades that there's long swords, but there's also 2 shorter swords.
Oh, yeah.
When I was looking, I said, I look at the data sheet. Which one should we build? And actually, there's no difference in the data sheet. It just says that they're armed with them. So they're a cool model. There's lots of options in the box as well to really make them unique. And of course, you use a different paint scheme as well to help it. So I think overall, that's a pretty decent box if you want to get into Emperor's Children. If you look at the pre-orders for the Emperor's Children stuff, the Tormentors and Infractors, they've sold out. Lucius is sold out. Wow. Fulgrim is still there. If you want a full painted tutorial, I've got one of those on my channel. I would say it was a labour of love, but it got painful by the end. But it's all broken down in a way that hopefully is very, very easy to follow. So again, I'd say that's probably a solid start at Combat Patrol for the Emperor's Children. I'm not sure how many Flawless Blades you'd need on the tabletop, but certainly that core of Infractors or Tormentors is really useful. And you can never have too many Lord Exultants, I don't think. Again, the new kits. So one of the things that jumped out to me about the Emperor's Children, we talk about trim, they are simpler than the Khorne Berserkers, than Thousand Suns, for example, in terms of how they're designing. They've still got trim, but it's not over the top. And I think you've got loads of options as well. There are so many options within the kits. That's good. So if you've got spare bodies, or I know Mikey from Hellstorm Gaming, he put a post about how you can actually make, you can get some double bubble out of it using some Mark 6 bodies and things like that. So that's a useful video to have a look at. So I think it's a fairly solid Combat Patrol.
And you beat me to pushing your Fulgrim video because I was gonna do that for you, but you beat me to it because I know how much you and I were chatting about it.
Yeah, so that's like now. Well, last pod we talked about, I was working on that, wasn't I? So it was. It
was a time.
Yeah, it was work in progress, but it's. Where is it? Here it is.
Hopefully, people in the comments got that joke. The tad excessive, was it?
It was a little bit too much.
Wow. Yes. What do you mean about him? Because you were trying to tell me how much he leans over, but that is.
Yeah. So if you this is the angle Games Workshop won't show you. So yeah, so you can see he's pretty much bent over at 45 degrees, and his tail is back at 45 degrees as well. So if his tail was forward and he was stood up straight, he'd be much bigger in terms of height. I mean, he's fairly hefty as it is.
What patron is he aligned with?
Slanesh.
If you look at that, I don't know if this was
Does it make
designed
an
to be like
S?
that, but that's an S.
Oh,
You held that up, and I was like, "That's an S." I was like,
yeah, it could be an S, couldn't it? Yeah.
I mean, it is a very. I mean, I could see that, but I don't know whether that was designed that way. But I
Yeah.
mean, in being lent over that much, obviously there's reasons as to why they
Oh
done.
yeah, I think so. I think it's just the kind of the pose and stuff. It's kind of like striking forward.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I didn't realize when I first saw it is this bit here
Mhm.
is actually flesh torn back, and that red bit is exposed musculature. I didn't realize. I thought it was just a banner that was when I first saw the photos. It was just a banner that had been painted on, but it's actually been ripped up. Actually, I've never found something disgusting on a model before until that. So
I've been,
yeah,
yeah. So speaking of that, the what was it? The Age of Sigmar model. The Glotkin. That is one of those models that I was painting it, and he's got pus like boils all over him, and I painted those yellow. And I remember painting it, and
yeah.
Jazz leaned over and just went, "Yuck." I was like, "Yeah." It grossed me out because there's so many of them.
Yeah.
To get them all, it was one of those ones I was like, oh, that okay. No, actually, another one.
There's more.
Can't believe I forgot about this one. The Hell Pit Abomination.
Oh yeah. But the
Right?
Alex ski one.
Yeah, paint the back of it. Like I remember when we were playing with the model in Canada. Every time myself, Callum, and Alex Fithammer, second shot at him, we kept looking at it. It's just the flesh is just like just breaking apart at the back
Yeah.
hind leg. Gross, absolutely gross. So yeah, that's the Emperor's Children, and
On that positive note.
yeah, the Middle Earth. Let's chat about that. The Middle Earth
Yeah.
Drake. That look, I'll be honest. I don't know what's going on with Middle Earth. Like they just seem to be kind of just shooting from the hip. There doesn't seem to be really any pattern to what they're releasing. But in saying that, there's some pretty nice models. These war drakes.
Yeah, I mean I've got I don't know where they would sit and there's gonna be guys in the comments who are probably token fanatics who can obviously help us point us in the right direction. I imagine they probably appear in something like Silmarillion or something like that, where there's a bit more history, a bit more detail. I think when we look at Middle Earth, there's such a wide variety of potential content that's in there. And when you look at obviously the licensing and say, I can't imagine the licensing is cheap for this. When you just look at what Amazon paid for the rights to make their series, so it's about making use of it. And there's really that Drake is a really cool looking model, but it's not something we've seen before. So
No.
it's interesting that they're going that way with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what your kind of thoughts are on the model itself or the kind of where it fits.
So admittedly, I'm a huge, huge Lord of the Rings fan. Like I have a rule that in social situations, if I get to talking about the Blue Wizards, I know I've probably lost everybody in the room, most likely, unless there's one person just being like, yeah, and then I'm like, my person, you are my
You're
person.
my guy.
Yeah, but yeah, they look like they're going from like I mean, just based on this, runes like the far east on the map of Middle Earth, so it's actually kind of off the map. The standard Middle Earth map is you don't really see much of it, but I think they're probably just pulling things that I've never heard of these. And again, as you said, there's some people out there who are probably much more educated in this type of stuff, but I've never heard of the drakes. I think they're mentioned and they are creations of Sauron, like Sauron created drakes and dragons and all that stuff. Sorry, Morgoth created them, his boss. But yeah, like the Easterlings. I mean, the Easterlings are, I think, some of the coolest looking. I think they're the coolest looking culture in the Lord of the Rings.
Because they're covered in Drake scale, aren't they? In Drake scale armor and stuff. So they've got yeah.
They weren't shown enough in the films, like at all.
No.
So
They were more than the extended edition, wasn't there? Marching into Mordor and that stuff.
yeah, you only see them really interacting with Frodo and Sam when they fall at the gate, and that's it. And I was like, where the? I mean, there was shots of them in the assault in Minas Tirith, but Yeah, they didn't make it into the cut. And then the last one is the Ballista crew, um, which again,
Corsairs of Umbar.
yeah, they look pretty cool as well. But I
They,
honestly,
look- they,
sorry,
go
go
on.
ahead.
No, I was going to say they look really cool. They look really nice. But the thing that jumps out at me is you've got the other Corsairs underneath, which really kind of demonstrates the
Ooh.
difference in sculpting techniques. And you've got, obviously modern digital sculpted new ones, and then you've got the older ones which were originally released in metal. And I've painted these
Mm.
long ago for a commission, um, and yeah, they obviously they're hand sculpted and they're of their time and things like that. So that is one other thing that's really cool. I mean, we saw it with the War of the Rohirrim box set as well. Just really fantastically sculpted new models, which I'm here for. I'm here for whenever they come out.
I Yeah, people who have watched my video on that, I have a bit of a bitter taste in my mouth after that one because that video, getting that box to board, broke me. My fault entirely because I left way too little time to get it done, and I put the unnecessary pressure on myself to get it out on the release date. But uh, yeah, that I just look at it and I'm like, I know what you did to me. But yeah, it's there is a bit of a difference there. That I think you hit the nail on the head there as well, like about the difference in the new sculpts versus the older sculpts. And as far as I'm aware, they're not planning on like redoing the old sculpts, which is a shame because there is quite a difference in the in how they look. But yeah, it's
I mean, you could probably again, we look at what they look like on the tabletop. You could get away with it. I mean, it would be great that if we got new riders, row handles, kinds of things.
yeah,
But I imagine saying that, I was going to say, I imagine the new stuff will stick more along lines of that. But actually, they just pulled these Drakes of Ruin out of nowhere, so
yep.
you never know.
Yep, yep. No, I agree. I mean, yeah. I mean, even just looking at the see if you look at the bottom right image, look at all the
Mhm.
like, look at all the copyright jargon.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
covered MPL, TM, and Middle Earth Enterprises, something like that. LIC, MPL, S25. Like when you see that type of stuff, you're like, okay,
Yeah.
clearly
And
got.
that's just an interesting side note on that. But when you enter Golden Demon, if you enter Lord of the Rings, you can't enter um, custom sculpts that you sculpted yourself,
Mm,
and you can't enter, I believe, anything that you have kit bashed because of the licensing requirements. It has to be an official model that Games Workshop have released.
mm.
So
Didn't know that. Didn't know that.
yes.
Whoa. I think is that all the news? Have we
That is all the news, the pre-releases. So let's go on to the meat of the episode, really. So everyone who's got through that, thank you very much. We're going to talk a little bit about Henry Cavill's show agreement with Games Workshop and Amazon, and like I said, we'll go through some of the facts, and then we might speculate a touch on what we think might happen. So, in terms of
also just as a
go
quick one, I have a
on,
bit of a hot take on this one, but we'll get to
hot
that.
take, go.
Well, no, we'll go through the
Oh,
details.
we'll go through. Okay, we'll go through the facts before the hot. There we are. I like that. Hooking people in and making them wait.
Exactly. Exactly.
And it's gone fishing.
Hmm.
So, in terms of some of the key developments, then, so there's an official agreement in December 2024 between Games Workshop and Amazon MGM Studios, finalizing the creative guidelines. Now, Games Workshop, they guard their IP like a hawk, and rightly so, because it probably is their most valuable asset. So that was really good. Um, Henry Cavill, who used to play Superman, used to play Geralt in The Witcher, he's a massive Warhammer fan. He is on board as an executive producer on the series. By all accounts, Amazon want to make it into a broader cinematic universe. So we're talking about Warhammer 40,000 specifically here, not Age of Sigmar. It's just the 40K that they've got the rights for. Um, and Henry Cavill's been working with his team and with Games Workshop trying to explore what they can potentially bring up with in terms of the stories they can cover. There's no timeline, there's no showrunner, so everything is still very exciting and I was going to say vacuous in space, well, it kind of is
Yeah, I mean,
a little bit.
perfect.
Uh, accidental pun there.
Yep.
So yeah, so that's kind of where we find ourselves at. There's very little information out there. I know Henry Cavill's been asked about it in interviews, and he's not been able to say very much at all, other than how enthusiastic he is. So are we ready for your hot take now, or are you gonna? Do we
Yeah.
need to build this up a bit more?
I mean, let's just leave them hanging for a little bit longer. Let's leave them hanging a little bit longer because it is. I think it's a good. Well, that's my point. So I think it's a good point, but obviously, there's people
It's
that
my
are
opinion, therefore it's important.
obviously. I mean, we've got a podcast, so therefore it is important.
There
Um,
are influencers.
yeah, of course, and YouTubers, as you called me in the first episode, which I've never forgotten about, in a good way.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think I've known about this for what seems like 3 or 4 years. I think this has been a kind of like spinning around ever since he came back as Superman, because I think he came back as Superman for Black Adam in that weird
Mm.
post credits scene. That all then fell apart. They then revealed pretty quickly after that they're going to reboot the whole DC universe. And then I think it came out that he was like, this is my next thing. But that was like a couple of years ago. I think that was maybe 2021, 2022. So it's been a while since we've been waiting. And I think there's a period of time between them releasing that news in December where I think there was quite a lot of rumors going around that he was having to step back because it was just not moving forward, which was
I think that might have just been the internet. I'm not sure. Things like this take time. And when things take time and they're being discussed in the way they're being discussed, let's face it, at a massively top secret level, then there's a vacuum forms, and people have got to try and fill that vacuum, haven't they, with speculation, a little bit like we're doing today. But when you if you go online and you look at the news, everything, it's like bad news sells, and therefore, there was a swathe of videos that came out. There was like Henry Cavill pulls out of Warhammer, and Amazon Game Joker can't agree, and there were loads of videos at the time, and the views they were doing was absolutely silly. When the reality of the process, they're just having the ongoing discussions,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
So we obviously don't know much about anything, and all we know is that it's going forward. Where would you personally start? If I came to you and said, right, Lloyd, this is your baby, where would you start? Because that's something I've been thinking about for a while.
That's a very good question. It's a very difficult one because the immediate gut reaction is Space Marines. You've
Yes.
got to start with Space Marines, but really, I mean, if you think about a Space Marine, how many times does the average Imperial citizen see a Space Marine? Never. And the reason, if you look at the way they did the Transformers movie franchise, now Transformers is all about robots. If you watch the cartoon, it's all about robots. The stories are all about robots, and the humans are just there to help and end up hindering, kind of thing.
Mhm.
If you look at how they did the movie franchise, they turned that around and they focused it on the humans.
Yep.
Because as an audience, you've got to have some sort of connection to what's on screen, and that 80s nostalgia is only going to take you so far. So I wouldn't be surprised if it comes down to something a lot more human
Grounded.
in element.
Yeah.
Um, I think I'm imagining that he's going to star in it as well. I can't imagine him not taking part in it. I remember he did an interview. I think it was when it kind of somebody asked him if he would want to be in it. This was before anything was announced, and he said you have to be really careful because once you play one character in 40K, you are forever that character. You know,
Hard
so
choice. That's a hard one to pick.
exactly, it's a very hard one to pick. So I think they'll do something a bit more human focused. I think the other challenge for it to be, I mean, I'm assuming it's going to be live action. Um,
Oh, so you've just tickled my
oh, it tickled you.
yeah, you've
Tickled your
tickled what I was
tingle a
going to
little bit
talk
there.
about. Shall I briefly talk about
Go
mine?
on then, jump in, jump in.
So my personal thoughts is that I believe that live action, and I think I think you're right, it is going to be live action. I think that the Warhammer 40K universe would be better suited to animation, personally, because obviously there's a host of issues that come with that. Like, but I'm thinking something along the lines of like Avatar,
Yeah.
where there are human elements, but a lot of it is like CGI motion capture thing. I think just from a practical standpoint, it makes so much sense to lean into that side of things. So I do hope that a lot of it is CGI, obviously practical where you can be practical, like Lord of the Rings did such a good job of that. But where they needed to go CGI, they did. Like, have you watched the was it the Secret Level Space
Yeah,
Marine? Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, the CGI has gotten to a point where it's very hard to tell the difference between, like, we're not losing any human emotions. The animators are
No.
so good at that. And I think that some of the stuff, And I would argue most of the stuff would actually be better suited for computer generators. And I think
I,
that's
I agree. I agree on that point, and I think that's part of the challenge, I guess, you've got in that is because the setting is so vast, and there are so many working parts within a setting that you're going to have a lot of CGI within it for it to be effective and for it to work. Um, so I think there will be an element of that. I mean, the secret level stuff is great, and that released on Amazon as well. So that might give us an indication of how they might do some stuff.
Mhm.
I don't think, or I think it would be a real challenge to do live action Space Marines.
Simply the scale.
Yeah, the scale, the armor, how the armor is supposed to work versus having an actor in there. Do you know? So again, there's going to be tech out there that will let you stick someone's head on a space. Do you know? But I can imagine that kind of stuff. If they're going to do Space Marines, I can see them keeping it within the remit of the secret level stuff, where it's really, really, really good CGI. I can see it sticking to that because even if you watch Space Marine 2, some of the CGI in Space Marine 2 game, that's really good. I know that's not associated with Amazon. It's Focus Interactive who did that. But just looking at that, that's really good. So I think if they're going to do Space Marines, it'll be in that capacity. The other counterpoint I'll make to your thing about that's not really a counterpoint, but it's something I thought about when you were talking about it. Sorry, I got everyone excited. I know they're going to disagree. Is that they're not going to release the same thing on Amazon that they're releasing on Warhammer TV. So Warhammer TV is all animation and stuff.
Yep.
A lot of it, and it got lots of different styles of animation on there. And then obviously that covers AOS as well as covering 40K. But why would they just duplicate what they're doing on there? They wouldn't. So something like Astartes 2, for example, if you've seen the trailer for Astarte, it looks phenomenal. It looks amazing. Why would they release that on Amazon? They probably wouldn't. So I see what the initial thing for Amazon or being released on Amazon is probably going to be live action. It's probably going to be a fairly small scale introduction to the universe because let's not, you and I know the universe. If you're watching this podcast, you probably know the universe. Joe Blogs on the street hasn't got a clue. So there's going to need to bridge that gap a little bit to kind of get people who've never seen the setting on board. I can genuinely see it being something like Eisenhorn.
Well, I think that's one of the characters he was quite.
Yeah, I mean, he looks at it. I mean, there's a little bit of resemblance to the model, the last model they did, but it just gives you that smaller scale. It gives you a little bit of a complex character to start with. So there's a little bit of intrigue in there. Is he good? Is he not good? Is he doing what he should? Is he not? He's got his retinue. So you've got that little kind of ensemble around the main character. And then you've got essentially some detective stories, which, we go out and they find it. And then, so I can really see it being something like that to get started, to get people introduced to the 40K universe. Because you don't need Space Marines for that. You just need humans, and that can be completely human. There may be some alien Xenos involvement somewhere on the line, Chaos, for example, but you can do all that stuff with practical effects or really good CGI. So I genuinely think it'll be something along those kind of lines.
Is that where, going back to my initial question before I came in with my CGI thing, but like, is that where you would potentially take it yourself if I was having...
I think so. I think so. I mean, if you want to get into the Warhammer hobby, the first thing you show me is Space Marines. And that's great. That works on the tabletop because, with the models and things like that. But I think the practicality of trying to do Space Marines in live action would be very challenging. So if it's going to be live action, it will be something that's more human focused or human character focused rather than Space Marines. I don't think it may have Astra Militarum in there, but I don't think you'd probably go full on.
No, they probably
with that. I mean, you could something like if you look at Starship Troopers as an example with the bugs and with there could be an equivalent of that with Tyranids and the other thing is got to kind of tie in or will have to tie in, I guess, with the direction of travel for Games Workshop at the time with what the stories they're telling are, what edition we're at, and do you know what I mean? So there's all these things that are going to have to pull along, because ultimately for Games Workshop is a massive marketing machine. It's the biggest marketing machine they'll have ever had. So there's going to need to be some sort of, I believe, tie-in along those lines.
Yeah. I mean, you just gave me a thought that I've never really even thought of it, but we need to potentially look at what the 11th edition box set is going to be, like the other army that goes with that, because it would make no sense, or I'll rephrase that. It would make a lot of sense if they tied the main bad guy opposition of the series to the box set that they release with 11th edition. So we know in all likelihood Tyranids, probably not, because I'm not going to repeat Tyranids. Necrons, probably not. Probably too much history to it. Tyranids could be quite a good one because there's no story to them. They're just a hungry bug, basically. So
no character development needed.
Yeah, but I would say that you want to have a fairly complex or fun enemy for them to face off against. So you could almost do like a process of elimination of who it could be. And again, from a business perspective, it would make sense if they had the main opposition of the first series or whatever it is being tied with the 11th edition box set release.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the rumors are, again, just rumors are that it's Orcs and Space Marines, 11th edition, which ties in with the announcement of Armageddon. Some of the Armageddon is Eleanor, which is the Orc homeworld. So there's going to be a big showdown, I imagine, between Gazgul and the Orcs and Space Wolves and the Angron and Green Knights again and all that jazz. Which I think we spoke about last time. So and again, when I look at the production, I think 11th edition is probably too soon for when we're going to be hearing some stuff around based on the speed of things have gone so far. And I think we probably have to dial down the setting a little bit. So it might not be planetary or planetary wide, but I tell you what might work is Genestealer cults.
So yes, that was one of my...
So an Inquisitor is sent to a faraway land to investigate what's going on and that kind of stuff. So Genestealer cults could, because again, you get that subterfuge, you get that, is he a Genestealer cult, is he not a Genestealer cult? You'll get that character development in there. They're very sneaky. So I think that could be a potential good set in it, or a good enemy to use.
I agree. I think that would probably make the most sense because you've got the big looming threat of the Tyranids. You've got then the depth of which Tyranids do take over worlds, where that's where they start. And it takes generations of like, you know, one person has like an extra finger, and the next generation has an arm, and the next one has a larger cranium, and then like it's slow. So I think it could be cool going that way. And then you've got the bigger looming threat of it unfolding to be like, oh no, this is like the start of a wave of what's coming next. So that series wise, that would make sense. Again, it would give personality to a pretty much personalityless.
Yeah, and it keeps it in that nice kind of box as well, that nice kind of scale where you can follow it. You know, if you know, it's not like we're not talking planetary invasion. We're not talking super warriors. There may be a space marine in it, but or dead space marine, because that would be easier to do. You know, so that's kind of where I envision it starting. Where it can go, I think
that's where it gets exciting. That's where it gets exciting. I mean, first, all I can think of, as I said, before I started my career now, which is obviously I've been a coach now for 15 years. I worked in the film industry, and that was my first love, and it still is a big love of mine. And that's why I like making these YouTube videos and stuff like that, because it's that perfect blend of everything I enjoy. But all I can think of is the budget. Like, the budget is going to be astronomical with just the CGI, the set design.
Yeah.
What we'll probably find is we're probably not going to get a huge amount of like big names attached to it. I wouldn't say, which I don't mind. I don't like it when big names come in.
No, I don't mind that. I think the budget's an interesting one, actually. When you look at how much they spent on Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
And I guess Lord of the Rings has probably got a broader fandom than perhaps Warhammer.
Yeah.
No less fanatical. It's probably worth saying. But and again, I think that just ties into that. I don't think Amazon is short of a pence or a dime or anything like that. But they're not going to throw good money after bad.
No, and I think
I think that first one is going to be really key. Yeah. And I think the budget, the purse strings might be a little tighter on that first one until they see what the reception is, how it goes down, and that. And then there'll be maybe like 2 or 3 series that they'll have in the can ready to go. or that they're going to green light, and then we'll go from there. I can see them doing. I don't know. I was going to say if it's like an Eisenhorn style thing, would they potentially do like 2-hour episodes where it's like a self-contained story for perhaps, but maybe that doesn't give enough time for character development. I'm thinking of something like you look at the other series that I watched on it. So Star Trek Picard Series 3, for example, that's I think it's 10 episodes, but you go on a real kind of journey with that, and there's a lot of history in that with obviously
crossovers within those episodes. Do they cross over at any point? Those episodes, are they completely like?
No, it's one big story, so it's one 10 episode story. Yeah. So, and I guess when you look at the other ones, they tend to do it that way. So it probably will just be something that's got like a nice big story arc like that, 8 to 10 episodes, hour-long episodes. So yeah, I think that's kind of, you look at the Reacher series, for example, where they've adapted the books, exactly the same thing. It's just one book or 2 books put together into an 8 episode series. So I imagine they'll do it along those lines, but I think the first one's going to be very contained in terms of its environment, in terms of characters, to make it really easy and really accessible to people. Because you're gonna have to do a lot of explaining just to get started.
A lot of hand holding, a lot of hand holding. Yeah, I mean, if it was me, if someone handed me this franchise, I'd be like, well, first of all, thank you very much, because it is like a sandpit of just creativity and fun. But I would, that would be the approach I would take. I would ground it. I would have humans to be the main focus. Obviously, you would have the odd like Eldar in there, just like hints to the grander scheme of things, just like Lord of the Rings. Like Lord of the Rings does such a good job of that. The films, specifically, where they mention things and it's world building without showing you everything. I don't think first of all, they probably wouldn't allow for it, and it would be too overwhelming. Because I mean, you've seen that meme where it's like, so tell me about Warhammer 40K, and you're like, okay. So I mean, do you explain the Emperor? Do you explain the Primarchs? Do you explain like the Horus Heresy? Do you go all the way back to the old ones? Do you go like, there's so much. But I think if they're smart with how they just mention these things in passing, that then they can come up later on, they can pull from those strings. But to me, start with humans, set it on a world, keep it on that world, have little hints outside of it, and to kind of just like, oh, if you turn your head here, you can see the vastness of this thing by introducing different races, by even just mentioning them. But I think, to me, the way you'd finish the series or midway through series would be introducing Marines. Like you've got to. I think you're going to have to see Marines in the first season.
It's got to be the cliffhanger right at the end of series 1.
Yeah, I mean
these eye lenses is flaring up in the background, and then lots of different eye lenses flaring up.
So for me, again, this is one of the things that I love. I love doing stuff like this. Like I always had the idea of how I would introduce Thor into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I would have Thunder.
Oh.
The song Thunder. Is it AC/DC? I'm probably going to get slaughtered.
Thunderstruck. AC/DC.
Yeah. I would have, there's a really cool line, and let's say picture the scene of like the Avengers, the new Avengers, whoever they are, just getting their butts whooped. And then one of the characters kind of laughing and kind of being like, And then one of the characters being like, what are you laughing at? He's like, oh, you don't hear it, do you? And he's like, no, what do you hear? And he's like, thunder. And they were we've just cut to Thor. This is one of the things I love to do, just in my own spare time. Cutting to Thor, just making him look like he should. And I think that's what you've got to do with the Marines. I think it's
what is this thing, spare time, that you talk of? Where can I get some?
Yeah, it's you have to, first of all, you have to trap a unicorn. You have to then you have to get the
Do they have many of them in Belfast?
Only one. You've got
that back garden.
Yeah, you've got to catch a leprechaun and then ask it where its gold is, and you've got to get that gold, and then you just mix it all up, and then that's where spare time comes from.
Get some spare time. Yeah. Nice.
But so I would do it, and there's a really cool like example. If you want to YouTube this, I think it's the Space Marine 2 trailer where it's the guard and fighting the Tyranids, and it's going bad, and then you just see those 3 hit the ground, crumpling underneath, and then just walking through. That is how I would have a mid-series or series finale of like, the only time you see a Marine. And as you said earlier, like how many people in the Imperium actually see a Marine? If you see a Marine, it's probably going to be the last thing you see. Like, if a Marine comes to your country,
that's if they're the right Space Marines. If they're the wrong Space Marines,
that's another one. Yeah, you're like, they've come.
So why have they got spikes?
They've got lots of spikes. Yeah, there's that. Is it the Iron Warriors?
Yeah, that's it. That's on WoW Flex as well. So
Backhands them. So yeah,
yeah,
you have to have the Marines in there, but I think you've got to build to that. You've got to set them apart. Because I'm not going to relate to him a Space Marine. Like no one's going to relate to a Space Marine. You have to have someone that hooks you in and is like, okay, I can relate to this person. I can relate to them. You have to start with humans. Introducing Space Marines is obviously a must, but how you do it, I think, is going to be where they potentially have the most fun. I think that's one of those scenes that you'll see like the internet reacting to that.
yeah.
I can
Like
already.
when Captain America, when the hammer flies back and Captain America catches it, and like the cinema just goes bonkers. Yeah, I think so. I think it will be really interesting how they, because I can't. It was I don't know if you've seen Halo, the Halo TV series. It's not amazing. It's not. I enjoyed it for what it was. It's okay, but one of the big challenges they had was obviously the armor that they were wearing as Master Chief and as the soldiers, Spartans. It's very heavy armor, but obviously it's made out of EVA foam. So in reality, it's very light.
Yeah.
So in terms of how they had to act like the armor was very heavy, but they were very maneuverable. So it's a very fine line. And that's the same issue you'll have with Space Marines, I think, unless you do something motion captured.
Yeah.
But then finding someone who's 8 foot tall and can act is also then going to be its own issue.
Yeah. And then even you've got the consideration of, and again, you see this with cosplayers, they can get the costume, but then their proportions are not the right size for the costume. Like your head looks too small.
Yeah.
I mean, everything about a Space Marine is big.
You see that in a lot of the artwork sometimes. The head always looks too small. But,
Yeah.
but then when you look at the actual models, the head is probably too big.
Yeah.
Because you need it, because that's a focal point of the model. So
And also it's easy to paint.
yeah.
But I
I'm
mean,
going to say something really controversial about this whole Warhammer series stuff now, right? And that is that as Warhammer fans, we are going to have to be patient.
yeah.
We are going to have to, we're not very good at it, I get that, but we're going to have to be patient with it. And we're going to have to give it room to breathe, in the understanding that on the one hand, we've got everything we've ever wanted. On the other hand, it's going to be really dumbed down. So it's not going to have the depth that we want.
Yes.
So I'm just a pledge to the community: don't ruin it, like you ruin most things, by just being overly critical, by leaving, And this is when you just look at Metacritic reviews and things like that of series that just, Star Wars is a classic example. His lightsaber wasn't the right shade of green, therefore it just gets petty and silly like that. And I think we need to recognize that this is a fantastic opportunity for our hobby, for it to be so completely mainstream. And I know some people won't like that. They want to keep it.
I get
I get that. But let's be patient. Let's give it air. Let's let it breathe. And let's see what happens. I think it's in good hands with Henry Cavill in terms of as a fan of the series.
Yep.
So let's just enjoy it and ride the dragon a little bit rather than try and shoot it.
Yes. I think, in Henry we trust. I really do. I believe that. I mean, the fact that he got removed, well, The Witcher kind of balled out because he was so adamant that they were doing it right, that he annoyed the writers. That's the type of person you need to have on your team if you're going to take something that you're like. If it was me on set, I'd be like, no, that's not how they would act. They would not act like that, because that's not like he is the right guy to be there. And I'm so glad that he is doing this. And you can tell, like, I mean, even one of the interviews he did, which I've seen all of them because it's Henry Cavill. But he said,
we'll get him on the pod, guys. If we get him on the pod, we'll get him on the pod.
Share this, yeah. I mean, my dream is to be on the show. I'll be a Gretchen, I'll be a Grot, I'll be Lottie, I'll be whatever. That's my goal. That's why I started the YouTube channel. But I think in one of the interviews I saw, he said it is the greatest privilege in his professional career to be given this, to be trusted with this. He knows his stuff. He's clearly passionate. He's not going to mess around based off previous examples of how he, with The Witcher as an example. I'm confident that the right guy is there. And that is something that whenever you're, because let's face it, this hobby is for me growing up, it was something I was self-conscious about. I didn't talk about it for a long period of time. I hid it. I still have a memory. Yeah, like I think a lot of people share in that. In fact, on a podcast I did recently, someone asked me, like, how did it feel to come out about liking Warhammer? And I was like, well, come on. I mean, it's not the same thing, but like I understand what he meant, because I remember growing up and the popular girls in school walking past the Warhammer store and me being like, "Oh, I've suddenly got to pick something off the floor." Hiding, because it's one of those things that being a nerd now is kind of more socially acceptable. We're obviously in our mid late 30s, early 40s, so we care a lot less what people
So
think.
you're in your mid-30s, I'm in my early 40s.
I was trying to get the age.
It's fine. Hey, I'm okay with it. I'm growing old very gracefully. I'm in the best shape of my life. It's fine.
He is. Look,
I'm thinking about another season of rugby next year.
oh, have you talked to your niece? How do they feel about it?
I'm not involved in the decision-making process. They were struggling on the leg press today.
But yeah, as I said, like, this is something that a lot of us in this hobby have this very personal, protective feeling about, because this is the thing that made us feel self-conscious. This is the thing that, like, protect it. And I get that. And as you said earlier, like, I completely understand that, but I think we have the best of us in charge of this thing. And
I think so. I think it is, and I do get why people will want to protect it, because it is their thing. And it will be where people find social acceptance at game stores, at painting, whatever it might be, whether it's, going to tournaments. So that is where some people will find their social acceptance. So they'll want to protect that. They'll want to, look after that. And we're not going to go into it now, but you just look at a little bit of furore around female custodies and that kind of stuff. Well, from a company point of view, it makes sense to expand the potential character pool to that kind of thing. So I get everyone's point of view. I think it was worth saying that let's just be on the bus, not off the bus. Try to slash the tires.
I agree. And I think that is actually, I mean, we could probably talk about, we could talk about this for hours and hours. And if you want us to revisit this topic, let us know in the comments.
Let us know in the comments.
At this point, please hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, drop a comment if you're interested in talking about this topic. But again, this channel will grow, this page will grow, this podcast will grow, and it's all down to you guys. And we want to just, again, say a massive thank you to everyone who has treated.
Yes, a huge thank you to everyone who has commented, liked, shared. It's always great. Once when an episode goes live, you see people sharing it on Instagram stories and everything like that. So we've got an Instagram account now as well, where we'll be sharing some reels from the pods, highlights, whatever it is we're talking about, lowlights, I don't know. That's all. It's highlights. But yeah, let us know in the comments if there's anything you'd like us to cover. Again, we are not experts in, well, we're just not experts, but we'll do our best to meander through and take you on a semi-entertaining journey through the Warhammer universes, wherever they meet. Old World, 40K, Age of Sigmar, we are down for it.
Yep.
So, with that being said, time to wrap up this pod. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like, leave a comment, and we'll see you next time.
See you soon. Bye.